Hello and welcome back to another episode of the C-Suite Cyber Podcast. The C-Suite Cyber Podcast enables C-Suite executives to make security-informed decisions. How are we doing today, guys?
Good.
No complaints.
Yeah,
Good,
enjoy
good.
laughing at your intros every time.
Well, it's because you're such a funny guy, Mike. You always make me laugh before we come on. But you're not the main star today. Today we have Mr. John Sharpe joining us. John has the pleasure of looking like a bald Gimli, as well as being a former supervisor of mine. So we have a unique little get together today where I've worked with both of you in various facets of life and various capabilities. So excited to catch up and see what everyone's been up to.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah. You were supposed to do your ad, but I guess we'll move that down.
No, I'll do that if you want me to. All right, I'll do it. He's ringing. So this episode was brought to you by Tandem Cyber Solutions, your go-to pen testing company. Do a little bit more than most pen test companies. So instead of just being there once a year, we're there all year for you, answer questions, make sure you stay secure 365 throughout the year. So if you're interested in chatting more about your annual pen test, reach out tandemcybersolutions.com/C-suite-cyber. All right. There you go. Done.
Boom. We need to record that like once and just insert it every other time.
I wish Riverside would let me splice. It does not do that, unfortunately, or I totally would do that. They keep adding, like, I guess shout out to them, kind of. Sometimes their updates suck, sometimes they're great. But they just like gave us, I think it was like 3 months ago, the ability to do an intro and outro, which is great. So maybe splicing's coming up soon. Who knows?
Small wins.
Yeah, I'll take them.
Just like other software, you never know what you're going to get. But not knowing what you're going to get, Mr. John. So, like I mentioned, we worked together many years ago. So, if you would be so kind to provide your background, where we started and where you're at now, I think that would be really interesting. And then we can get into the people on your shirt, because that looks like a fancy shirt, like the Spartans. Mike's got an alien. Unfortunately, I just have green, so I'm not the cool kid today. But yeah, take us through your background.
Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah, so was always doing computers growing up, everything like that. I was the kid who usually got in trouble in high school for figuring out how to send messages across the entire network or, altering certain programs that the school was using. But yeah, we joined the military in 2010, active duty Air Force, started off in server and network administration. That was officially the first gig in IT. Before that, worked like 23 jobs, always tried to do something, sales, you name it, nailed it all down, but didn't have the longevity that I was hoping for, right? So I was like, how do I get training, certification, experience, kind of this full gambit? So decided Air Force was the way to go. After about 3 years of being in the server administration, network administration side of the house, there was an opening for cyber warfare. They were just standing off the career field. So went from a 3DO X2 to a 1B4 X1, which is 1 Bravo, cyber warfare. I was the first senior airman without a line number to get into the career field, so I was the absolute lowest ranking. It was a hell of a ride. It was, about 6 months worth of training. I think we had like 52 tests in a matter of like 12 weeks.
Yeesh.
And you could only fail 2 back-to-back or 3 total before they kicked you out of the program. Like, just pack your bags, go home. You're not cut out for this field. So, yeah, was fortunate enough to make it through. Got sent to the only unit that did network defense for the Air Force mission. I was there for about 8 months, 9 months before I got a phone call that I had a new inbound troop, and it was this guy right here. Well, it was an interesting phone call at the least. But yeah, so did that. Wound up separating. I was in from 2010, separated 2016. I did 6 years total. After that, transitioned to a startup within a company. So I went to Rackspace. They were doing managed security service practitioner work, but they were standing up essentially a customer-facing SOC. So I started off there as a tier 2 analyst after I transitioned out of the military. Made my way up to team lead there. My boss left, went to a new company 18 months later. Got a phone call shortly after to come with him and be his right-hand man and help him stand up another operation. So I went over to a company called Blue Voyant, worked there for about 18 months as well. Started there as a team lead and kind of transitioned into my last 3 months there. They actually sent me to Seoul, and I got to go help land an overseas client for them, showing their SOC how to integrate threat intelligence into their operation day to day, operationalize their threat feeds, etc. So that was pretty cool. That was my first taste of. I had an 8-year stint there where I was doing Panama schedule, rotating between days and nights every 7 weeks and all that fun stuff. Seoul was my first taste of normal life again after many years. So I was like, holy crap, this is what it feels like to not run on exclusive energy drinks 24/7.
Yeah.
So found a job local. At that point, I moved up to Maryland for Blue Voyant. And then there was a local job here in Frederick for Thermo Fisher Scientific, which is where I work right now. Started there as a senior analyst. Was a SOC manager, and now I lead the global team. So I'm a global SOC manager for our 3 locations that we follow the sun for.
Awesome. I took some notes. One thing I would like to point out is you had to go to school. I was direct converted into 1 Bravo. It's not often that
Yes,
I get to
true.
brag, so I gotta slip it in where I can.
Everyone was surprised there wasn't a huge window of direct converts at that time. I think you were the first one. So
Yeah.
aside from when they initially stood up the field.
Were both of y'all just like at the very beginning of cyber like careers in the Air Force then? Like kind of at the forefront?
The first time that they made that cyber warfare dedicated field, right? Up until that point, a lot of the Air Force, like comms and cyber roles had a 3 designator, which essentially like 1 is kind of tip of the spear, 2 is like immediate support, 3 is like the back end support, like the long haul communications, all that stuff. So that was like one of the first major, dedicated cyber warfare career fields, tip of the spear kind of thing.
So a lot of the old heads just went like from a 3D to 1B. They didn't change positions or anything. They just made the career field official. And then, did you have wings?
What was that?
Did you have wings?
For a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I got wings because I thought it would be cool, and it was cool. But
What are the wings for? What is this?
it was like you had to pass a test, I think, and then you got wings over your
Cyber wings, yeah.
plate. So like pilots have wings, and they wanted the cyber nerds to feel special, so they gave us a type of wing.
Yeah. So being we had that cyber warfare designator, and the way they even broke things up, right, is all of our missions were still handled like they were sorties, essentially. So they did a lot of direct correlation to the flying world. So that was their way of kind of keeping us tied into that Air Force mission, was we were flying cyber missions.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So a lot of our hands-on keyboard time was flying sorties. You had a log time. How long were you behind the keyboard? What were you doing? Everything like that.
Sheesh. Yeah, that does sound really very, very much like flight, like pilot stuff.
Yeah, they tried real hard for that. So
We flew desks.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
chairs.
Yeah, rolly chairs across the room.
So very
So,
different.
yeah, but it was
backgrounds,
cool,
but
man. It was great to be kind of in that front line. The first ones in the career field. We're the first ones. Like I say all the time, I'm here to break shit. So we were the first ones to get in there and really do exactly that. Right? We pushed the limits. We found things. I joke around, but I was the reason that there's an Air Force regulation between the Air Force and NSA. Because when I was going through that schoolhouse, being the first one that was a senior airman with no line number for staff sergeant, NSA tried to cherry pick me right off the bat. So nobody else had orders. We were like 2.5 weeks into the program, the training program. And all of a sudden I got a notification I'm going to Hawaii. And then Big Blue Air Force and NSA had me out for probably like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then finally came back and I'm like, no, you're going to get diverted. Can't cherry pick. So there's a full process now on why you have to pass the certain operator exam to be NSA at this point.
I've heard a lot of people doing rotations through there who have done military stuff. I know quite a few people that's done that. That's kind of interesting how they do that.
It was interesting
Yeah,
because when I was leaving, several of us had orders, and I chose to get out. And then all of the people that had orders there got diverted back to San Antonio, and they made it like a tier, if you will. So like San Antonio first, and then Hawaii was the higher tier.
yeah, because it was harder to keep people still in San Antonio.
Oh,
That was
obviously.
where majority of the career field was, though. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Did I ever tell you, AJ, I tried to go to the Air Force at one point,
I don't
but
think you did.
yeah, they said I was broken, and they wouldn't take me. So this is so I was like, just because you probably don't, you don't know my story, John. So I was in the Army, I was in the infantry, and I was like, okay, I should probably do something else with my life after the first deployment on the front lines. And they were like, no, we don't take anyone that's been deployed on the front lines from the Army. It's like, well,
yeah,
oh well.
that's an eye-opening experience for sure.
Yep, I was
Uh,
broken. They don't want me.
John, so one thing you mentioned was starting in support, and that's how I started too as a 3 Delta. Um, do you think that that makes better operators going from support into like the operational side?
100%. And I don't just think it, like, I've seen the results at this point, right? I pride myself in trying to be an open door for new talent wherever I can get it. Had implemented and led many different programs where we're taking in interns or whatever we can, shadow opportunities, trying to get people in to get their foot in the door in cyber. I know it's not easy, right? See 1,000 jobs out there that are entry level and all of them want 10 years experience plus and all these other ridiculous things, and people really struggle for it. So I make it a point to try and bring in new talent. But I can tell you that I see a big differentiator from folks who have at least an IT background, especially like site support, network administration, those kind of things. It kind of clicks for them a lot easier, right? Because when you think about it, that's the core fundamentals. That's the foundation, even back with the one Bravo schooling and all that we went through, right? They wanted you to be in our career field prior to coming to that career field for a reason, and even then they pushed you through security. Plus, if you didn't have it, you had to kind of go through that fundamental background because there really is a lot of value with it, right? Because if you think about from a cyber perspective, right, especially SOC and everything that I do, you have to understand these adversaries are using known legitimate, applications on the network. They're trying to exploit that exact same thing that everyone else is logging into and administering the network all day, every day. So if you understand how it's supposed to work, you can see the red flags when it's not working as intended or it's doing something out of the norm. So I think that's a huge benefit for folks who come from that background or at least have studied it up before they jump into their first role. Because understanding administration, Active Directory, all those kind of things really helps when you're in the middle of response mode, right? So those are the same things that the adversaries are going after and targeting. So
This is a hot topic. I want to stay here for a second. Well, it's, a lot of people ask. So I have another podcast that's covers other stuff, and I do streaming to help people get into cybersecurity. And this is a hot topic, right? Should I go IT or should I not? And there's a big split. So you're obviously on one side. So what type of roles? Is it just like AD specific, networking specific? Is there one specific job that they could have that would really prepare them to be in the SOC from your experience?
yeah, I mean, honestly, if you don't want to dive deep, right? If you want to get an IT job entry level that you can kind of sink your teeth into and start to understand everything and get something on your resume, right? As a resume builder, I see a correlation. I joke around all the time, and please don't take it as a knock to the SOC work. But I joke around like it's essentially help desk type work where SOC is kind of that frontline cybersecurity help desk, especially in a lot of organizations, right? My company is a big thing. You see something, say something, raise it to the SOC. SOC is your first line for any security concerns you have. So it helps you with that mentality, right? You're going to learn the basics of ticketing and kind of ticket management, time management, all that kind of stuff, which is a huge part of SOC operations. Ticket notes, closures, all that good stuff, SLAs. But it also gets you in that mindset of kind of the customer service and the triage aspect of it, right? You're going to try and identify the problem as quickly as possible, figure out root cause, and then drive through those remediation steps to try and close out whatever the issue is. So I really joke around that it's not direct one for one, but I feel like it gives you a lot of the core skills that gives you a bigger springboard when you do make that leap. Again, making that leap is tricky, right? One of the things that I always tell people is get out there, ask questions. When you find somebody who's in that field, hey, can I pick your brain for 20 minutes? Can I chat with you on, here's where I'm at in my career and I want to make this transition. What did you do? How did you do it? Learn from other people's opportunities and experiences, because it's not easy. But when you do find that opportunity, that person is willing to give you a chance, especially having that background behind you, I think is a differentiator. I think that brings an added skill set to yourself that would make you stand out amongst other candidates without any experience.
Continuing down that thread, keep pulling it. I guess this is less C-suite. Maybe I guess it's kind of C-suite stuff, but when you are looking at, say, a stack of resumes, right? Because you put in, say, a junior level role, you're probably getting 1,000 in a day. Like, it's probably stupid. So 2 questions for that. One, what types of things stand out to you where you're like, I want to pick these 10 or 20 out of this 1,000? And 2, how do you get through that many applications efficiently, and get the right people for the roles?
Yeah. So my first thing was, if there's over 1,000 applicants, what can you do as the applicant to stand out? It's those little steps, right? If you know somebody who's at the company that you're applying for, whether it's just hey, we're a connection on LinkedIn and we cross paths at one point, or if it's somebody that you know and you're good friends with, right? Pull in that thread and be like, hey man, is there any way you can get me in touch with somebody from this hiring section, right? Whoever the team lead is, whatever. I give me an email. I just want to introduce myself. Make that attempt to kind of just ping, hey, I applied to this role. I just wanted to follow up and say I really appreciate any consideration, whatever. And do something like that to stand out is always a win. Especially if you do get an interview, I always recommend within the first couple of hours to 24 hours, shoot a follow-up email. Just, hey, thanks. I appreciate the time, appreciate everything. And then really look at that role from my perspective, the hiring manager, what makes people stand out. I'm a little biased. I think things have shifted a bit, right? The certifications, the education, all that stuff. It was prime real estate and a big driver back in 2010. This probably until around like 2018, 2019, where that was a big changer for that space, right? If they saw something like a Brown University, like people were like, oh, hey, well, it's got Ivy League behind it. I feel like now it's more so checking the box, right? So if you're checking the box along with everyone else and people aren't really looking at where the degree is coming from, just that you have it, what else can you do to stand out, right? Can you showcase that you have your own cyber lab and maybe you've done some write-ups or you've done a podcast or you've done other things that kind of show your expertise? That type of stuff as a hiring manager shows me that you're passionate about it in some way, shape, or form. You care to get more knowledgeable and you're investing your time outside of just checking the box, right? Certifications, same thing, right? I mean, now we know some of these certs are, $6, 7, 8, 9, $10,000. And does it really bring you $10,000 worth of value to the market? I'd argue no. That's one of my biggest struggles from my perspective, as somebody who's trying to get my teams hired all the time. When I go up and I say, hey, this brand new analyst that we hired a year and a half ago wants to go for a certification. Oh, and by the way, it's, a tenth of their salary just to be able to go take this certification. I kind of get looked at like, all right, well, what is the value it's going to bring? How are we going to drive it? Like, is it really going to bring us back that big of a return on that investment? And that's where you've really got to play the long game from a leadership perspective, right? Well, hey, getting into this, is going to help them open up for forensics opportunities, which will then help align to, but you've got to really thread that needle. So I think it's more show competence now, right? Can you show competence in what you're doing, what you know? And that's through things, like I said, being able to show a blog, show a clip of a podcast, show things that you're actually passionate about. Even examples, right? Sometimes it's a quick video. Hey, I set up this lab environment, ran through this malware exercise, and I got a quick recap to kind of show you the cool thing that I wrote to help remediate or to help solve this problem. Those people 9 times out of 10 are the superstars. And I can say I just hired one recently. And this analyst is phenomenal. He just graduated out of college, but you could tell that this is what he lives, breathes, loves doing. And as soon as he hit the ground running, this kid is not stopped. So my only concern now is pulling him back a little bit this way he doesn't get too far out over his skis, but it's those little things that help make someone stand out, and I've got another guy that I hired on about a year ago. Great kid, was an intern at a different part of the company doing, essentially like engineering work, cybersecurity engineering work. Really enjoyed the SOC. That was one of the things that clicked for him. Reached out to me probably 9 months after his whole, internship ended. I was like, hey, I'm graduated now. Really struggling to find, a good place to land. Got a lot of these, rejection letters piling up at this point. Like, can you help me just chat with me? What can I do differently? I had a good conversation. Funny enough, like 2 months later, I had a role open up and I pinged him and now he's on the team and he's phenomenal, right? But it's again, that network connection. He was an intern. He reached out to me back when he was interning, asked the questions, and then he was willing to make himself stand out. And granted, there was no role at the time, but just, hey, I really appreciated my time with you. Can we chat? Can we go lunch? Can we, go get coffee? Help me understand how I can try and navigate this a little bit better. So, and the same thing with hiring, right? Those opportunities where you have that connection, don't sell it short.
Yeah, good advice. I guess I can shut up, but yeah, I just wanted to ask because a lot of
No, you're
like
good.
this is a huge topic of conversation, right? Like I think the barrier of entry is getting higher and higher, especially with AI now. And yeah, people are still struggling to get in. They were struggling before, so they're like, how do I cut through the noise? How do I get in front of these hiring managers?
It's hard
So I
now
can
too
get
because they're using AI platforms, right, to evaluate. People are using them to help write their resumes. B, they're helping use them to cut through all the noise and find good candidates. But even then, it makes mistakes. It cuts people out that probably shouldn't be cut out. It jumps to conclusions that maybe aren't perfectly sound in logic. The same reason why I joke around, like when people say like, "Oh, SOC is going to get replaced one day by AI." You can't replace that human intuition and element, no matter what you do, no matter what you try, no matter how much you try and train those, LLMs and everything else that you've got going on, because it's just the human aspect, right? You look at someone's resume and you can kind of thread a needle and understand a little bit of their journey and where they came from, looking at things, how long they've been there, what were their, additional duties, things that they were doing additionally, were they involved in certain groups during that same time frame, where the machine just going to look at that thing and cut it, right? Doesn't fit, doesn't have these keywords out. So you're fighting AI on multiple fronts, both on the hiring front and, from a business standpoint, trying to filter out all the people who are using AI that probably aren't qualified, but AI makes it sound like they are.
There's
But
a
I joke around, but I'm planting my flag that, SOC is not getting replaced by AI anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it will replace some of the jobs. Like I think there will be less because people will be more efficient.
Yes.
But they'll be there. You have to have them.
That's exactly what I'm looking for, right? Like I want AI tooling to come in and help alleviate some of that front heavy lift from my team. This way they can spend their time sharpening their tool set on more important things, the things that are deeper dive where they need to get more familiar with operating systems and processes and how they work and, chasing down those kind of threads in this, the needle in a stack of needles. And it's hard to do that when you're getting onslaught by thousands of emails coming in with, hey, this looks suspicious, or I clicked on a bad link. That's the mind numbing stuff, right? And that's where AI can help augment. But yeah.
Yeah. AJ, go. You're too
there's
quiet.
there's a few things that you mentioned that I wanted to follow up on. The first one is the thank you email. So this probably varies by org, but I know at least where I currently work, we're not allowed to respond to anything from people who are in the process. And afterwards, like if they're not selected, maybe you can. I don't really remember, but the whole point of like them being, or not the point, but while they're in the process of being in review for that position, we're not allowed to talk with them. Is that something that you've seen at other organizations, or should they send it anyways?
So I've seen it in some highly regulated organizations, and there's certain industries where that's probably a good rule of thumb, right? Because you don't want it to appear, especially larger companies, right? You don't want it to appear like favoritism or anything of the sort like that. That's a differentiator. But I still think it's worth that reach out, right? Even if it's on social media, right? But just a quick follow up. Hey, it was a pleasure to chat. I really appreciate the time. it's something short, sweet, to the point. You're not expecting a response back, right? You know, I've had a guy in my past who I saw me post a role, and he reached out to me probably 3 times during that process, just with quick questions, nothing crazy, right? But just, you know, what first thing, this guy stood out to me. He made me laugh hysterically, but like he called me or he pinged me and he's like, "Can we chat real quick?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, man." He's like, "I just have questions around the role." Kudos, right? I've got 1,000 people that are messaging me like, "Hey, here's my resume. You know, am I a good fit? Let me know. What can I do to be better?" This guy was like, "Hey, man, can I just get 5 minutes of your time? Because I have a couple questions about the role." That's something that different and stood out to me, right? But again, yeah, some places you can't do that, and that's perfectly acceptable. But from the outside, they're never going to know unless they shoot their shot, right? I'm a big believer in take your shot, and worst comes to worst, you miss. But it's better to know that you tried than to just walk away and say, "What if later?"
I mean, it's a game of percentages, is what I coach people. Like everything you do, everything you can add, it just increases the chance that you're going to get the role. You know, if you're not doing these things, well, you're not increasing your chances. You're not hurting them either. But every certification, every lab you do, every blog you write, whatever, it's just making you more and more
You're
marketable.
saturating, yeah. You're expanding that operational ability to get out there. And I had a buddy of mine, somebody that AJ and I worked with, that wrote an article on LinkedIn, but he talked about, you know, a lot of people always say, "Oh man, you're so lucky. You're so lucky you got that role. You're so lucky you're at, you know, where you're at today. You're so lucky." But he brought up, he's like, "Dude, it's engineered luck,
Hmm.
right? You put in the time, you put in the grind, you put in the hustle, you studied, you stayed up late, you did all these things, you put yourself out in those opportunities, whether it's, you know, attending conferences, whatever it is, and kind of getting that social networking thing going, right? And expanding yourself. And all of that puts you just in a position when the opportunity passes you to take that leap, right? It's not luck. You had to put in a lot of time to get to that point where you can even jump and be within arm's reach of that opportunity. So, you know, it's putting in that work. You're going to get 1,000 no's before you get that one yes, but that one yes is going to be game changing, right? But a lot of people quit after the first 5 no's, and that's the differentiator, right? That's how you find people who are going to go the distance versus people who are just going to kind of sit there and blame the system or the game and kind of walk away frustrated.
Yeah, there's a lot of that there. And I mean, which you like, that's a good way. Like, this is going to be a short, guaranteed. Um, Engineered luck, like that is the best description I've heard for this. And it's like you said, like, you know, yeah, you're not getting it yet, but you're getting yourself ready for when the opportunity comes knocking. You can knock it out the park. You can answer
Yep.
that door, answer their
You
call,
do that.
and win.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put in the reps, right? So shout out to that was Justin Ryan there, his article. But
Okay. Yeah, there's a quote that I like I think it's luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity.
yeah, yep,
Um, I don't remember who
you got to
said
put
it.
the reps, you got to do the time, and then you are ready to take that leap when it comes. But
Yeah. My other question, going back to what you had mentioned, and I think Mike was kind of laughing at this when you were talking. So I don't have a 4-year degree. Would you kind of walk through how you would uh, view someone with a degree versus someone with experience? And I guess what certifications or what experience would you be looking for in order to make a higher, let's say like a manager position, right? Not a low level analyst, but a manager.
yeah, so I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, right? I didn't get my bachelor's until 2019. So same boat as you, man. Like I was doing the job and in cyber for years before I even went back to school to finally finish that thing. And let's be honest, I did the military thing. I dragged it out over many, many years to get that 4-year degree. But I personally at this days, and I think it's a testament, right? Look at the job recs out there today for leadership positions, for any position, right? 90% of the ones that I see are, hey, bachelor's or equivalent experience, master's or equivalent experience. Like some of them are even going as far as saying, like, show me a master's or 8 years experience or 10 years experience. Like they vary, but I think that shows you the shift that people are making now. That let's be honest, you know, sometimes the things you're learning when you're going through that experience, they're outdated. You're learning from books that are a couple years old. It took a couple years to publish. That by the time, even if it's the latest and greatest version, right, you're probably dealing with exploits from a cyber perspective, right? That occurred 2-3 years ago at the earliest, so what you learn there is more foundational. I would argue that it's not real world experience, at least not until you're getting into things like capstones and exercises and hands-on type lab work. That's when I think that's money. But a lot of the coursework you go through, I don't think it's enough to differentiate you from anyone else. I think the things that I look for when I'm looking at folks that maybe don't have that background of a degree or whatever, show me that you can do the job, right? When I'm interviewing and I see folks who don't have the degree, but they're showing me that they have everything else and they're competent in the way we talk, right? My big thing is just show me you know what you're talking about, right? Let me ask you a couple questions and help me understand where you're at. Let me put you in a situation. And on the flip side, right, one of the things that I've used myself and I tell people all the time that I help mentor and coach is if you don't know something, do not fake it till you make it. That is the number one sign. Like people will call you out on it right away, right? But what I'm more worried about, and to be honest with you, it's an even better tell sign. Explain to me how you'll get there, right? Hey, I'm not 100% sure on problem X that you just posed to me, but here's what I would do to solve for that, right? I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to go, maybe they're asking me about an exploit, right? I'm going to go read up on it. I'm going to go check out Krebs. I'm going to go check out whatever resources I have open source wise. I'm going to gather the details. And then I'll figure out like what are best practices and I'll go implement that change in my Qualys system or whatever I've got going on, right? That's the type of stuff where that speaks louder to me than if I were to get a textbook answer, because you just gave me insight into how you're a problem solver, how you're going to find a solution, and you're not sitting there going, oh, I'll go ask the person who already does the job and get the answer from them. No, you're saying I'm going to go learn it, right? I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to come back with what is, recommended best practices. And then of course, I'm in an environment where maybe we don't have those tools, but then I'm going to sit down and figure out how do I implement those things across the network or do what I need to do. That shows me that you're going to be somebody who I can put into a role and you're going to operate with an autonomy, right? So my job as a leader, especially now, like in my position, I'm a manager of managers, right? A leader of leaders. I need to be able to trust that you can make the right call, use your best judgment, and drive to resolution, right? And especially with the global operation, right? I'm not going to be awake all the time. I trust you to go do what you need to do. I had a master sergeant when I was early on in my career, and he told me, and I love it. But he was just like, look, you do your best with what you have. If you make a mistake, it's cool. No big deal. We'll figure it out. He's like, nobody's going to yell at you. And if anyone does yell at you, then it's not me. Let me know. Right. He's like, nobody else is going to chew you out but me. He's like, I have your back to the end. So, but I didn't realize until later on in my career, that was a safety blanket, man. Right. That means that when I'm in the moment and I'm hands-on something, trying to fix somebody's computer, printer, whatever it is, right? And maybe they did something absolutely ridiculous and I got to uninstall, reinstall, it takes on their process. They're unhappy with me. My supervisor has my back, right? So if it takes longer than it should, if I'm breaking SLAs, if I'm doing, like I have that autonomy and I have that safety blanket, which made me feel safe enough to take that leap, where I think a lot of people don't value that, right? There's something about security that helps people with autonomy and innovation and all that stuff. And if you feel secure in a role, then you can operate in those spaces and continue to push the limits. So for me, I cherish that type of environment. So I need my people, going back to the question, right? I need my people to be able to operate from a place of autonomy, a place where they know they're safe to mess up and I'm still going to have their back and I'm still going to go, out to bat for them, but push the limits. Things are always broken, right? I joke around, but nothing's perfect. I tell my team all the time, like I came through senior analyst here, right? I'm like, if my name's still on those playbooks, you got it wrong. It shouldn't be me anymore. You guys should have 10 different iterations of that playbook at this point in time. So from my perspective, if I was hiring a manager, I need somebody who can know enough about the job, but be able to delegate and be comfortable, right? Make decisions, make calls on the fly. It's cool. Worst comes to worst, you break something. The only thing I'm going to come back and say is, all right, cool. What did we learn and how do we make sure we don't do it again? That's all. Is it a new process, a new procedure? Do we need some core documentation? Like, let's figure that out. But problem solving is the biggest thing, especially in the operational, space. You're not going to have playbooks for 99% of what you come up against, right? You got to be able to call an audible. So I need my team to be comfortable doing that.
Man after
Nice.
my own heart. I think like that's the problem. People try to force fit playbooks into every scenario, and you get like these super junior people that are just like, no, this is all we can do, and it's like,
Checkbox, right? No, I can't deviate from these
yeah,
guardrails.
it's like, no,
Yeah,
go.
that was drove me nuts. The military was literally check boxes. That's it. You had no room to move, nothing. You check the box, move on to the next. We had solutions where we had like full packet capture across the network, and the only time we used that thing was to log in and validate true source IP and then move on to the next. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And it's again, you can have all the greatest tools in the world, but if you don't have the intelligence or the ability to get the people behind it to really innovate, you're just checking boxes.
Yeah, I like to tell people, it's like, it's not what you know, it's how you use that information creatively. That's what sets you
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah, I tell people, and the comfort, right? I joke around, but dude, I've made huge mistakes. I've brought down networks. I've done things like that. That's part of the game, and nobody should feel ashamed of it. And anyone who's up in leadership position that hasn't done that yet, either needs to be honest of the situations where they have done something major. Be human, man. We all are. I brought down networks. I even here at my current company, right? I'm like, oh, let me make this small change. And I brought down the ticketing system for like a whopping, 3 hours. Oops. Now I know for next time, right? But that human element is a huge thing that I feel like leadership doesn't show people anymore. And that's what really earns people's trust for those who follow you, right? If they can see that you make mistakes too, you're human too, you'll be surprised how much more loyalty and trust you have, right? As opposed to trying to be this perfect, polished, and primed robot.
Yeah.
What do you think has been the biggest difference from like managing the SOC to being the global security manager? Like transitioning from just managing people to managing leaders.
Yeah, I mean the biggest difference, right, is the program's in my hands now. So any shortcoming, any fall, anything like that, I'm the one on the chopping block that has to answer for it. But I joke around that I don't mind it at all, right? To the point that we were talking about earlier, right? Creating a safe environment for people to innovate and push. That's the type of stuff that's going to help you on the maturity roadmap. There's a book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And I love the message behind it because it literally talks about like coming up through your career, right? You're from a technical hands-on perspective, you were taught things and constantly shown how to do your job throughout your entire journey until you hit that management track, right? To your first leadership role where they're like, all right, cool. Now you're in charge of everyone else who does the job. And by the way, what I feel like, and we don't do a good job of setting people up in that environment. So you went from being a great individual contributor that got to a point in your career where you were recognized for your excellence. And now you're in charge of sharing your excellence with everyone else. And a lot of times everyone makes this mistake, right? You jump in and you be hands-on because odds are, yeah, you probably can do the job better than your team. That's why you're there. So the big differentiator there is with what got you here will get you there is realizing that you need a new skill set now. I call it a lens, right? You need a new lens to look at the problems through. Your job is no longer to go fix the problem. Your job is to create an environment where your people are empowered to go fix those problems, where you're training them and instilling that in them and pushing them forward. Like it officially starts to become chess instead of checkers, right? Now your job is to set up the board for everyone to find success. You put yourself out of a job. Like I should be able to disappear tomorrow and my team can continue to run forward, drive, do everything they need to do. And all of my direct managers underneath me should be able to fill my role and make those decisions in autonomy without me being there. But that's a learned skill over time, right? That's not something that you just have the second you become a people leader. You've got to fail. You've got to make mistakes. I'll tell you, I learned a ton of experience from, just our short time with having you as my troop back in the day, AJ. It was just, you figure it out, right? But that was a telltale sign, right? There were things that were being asked. And I personally feel like as a leader, you have to stand by what you feel is right. And you can either choose to toe a line or you can choose to stand your ground. But one of them is going to get you respect and trust of your leadership. The other is going to get you respect and trust of your team and your people. My argument that I make all the time, and I'd probably get in trouble for this all the time, but I would rather have the warriors behind me than the generals behind me, right? When I have to go to war, I want the people who I know are going to have my back and go do the thing versus a couple politicians or whatever the case is. I'm not saying that there's not good leaders and stuff out there, but I would argue 9 times out of 10, it's harder to find a good leader than it is to find good doers. So yeah, it's a mindset shift, right? To bring it back to your question, it's taking yourself out of the equation and remembering the mission and what you're there for, right? If you're in leadership to be self-serving, I got bad news for you. It's gonna get ugly real quick, right? You're gonna lose a lot of people. You're gonna lose a lot of trust. The whole point of leadership is to be selfless, right? You put your teams first. Your teams are set up for success. Your teams continue to grow, and that is a tale of your success as a leader.
Well said.
Mm-hmm. I feel like AJ, when you were a leader for him, he was like one of the guys I used to have where every Friday, the list of things I had to tell him not to do kept growing longer and longer.
Cannot confirm nor deny. No. Yeah. The safety briefing used to get a little lengthy and rather specific. No, I'm kidding.
It was one time.
No, he was good overall. He had one bad situation, but outside of that, he was good.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I have a question about SOC stuff because I mean, you most of your career is kind of playing around the SOC. What kind of stuff have you seen in terms of technology that is reshaping how the SOC does what it does? Like, is there anything new that you've seen that, like, all right, yeah, we used to do this thing where it's just ticketing system, whatever it was, but have you seen anything besides AI, obviously, reshaping how the SOC actually performs?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different technologies out there that I saw that were pretty cool throughout my journey in recent history, I can say. There's some technologies out there now that did like overlay type work, right? So you can plug them into threat feeds and you can get a real-time overlay on your screen. So when an analyst is going through Splunk logs or data, like you actually get a color coded, hey, we got a hit for an IOC or a hit for this. That company was pretty interesting. I like the approach to it, right? You can essentially plug your threat intel feeds in and almost kind of feed it to your analyst in real time, which I thought was a pretty cool force multiplier, but I don't think it executed as well as it could have. But it was great concept, and I'd love to see more of that. Obviously, SOAR is another one that I think changed the space and operations very much so. You're seeing a lot of different variations now of people trying to integrate AI into SOAR, next-gen SOAR platforms, all that kind of stuff kind of becomes like the new buzzwords like XDR and all that, SOAR was definitely a game changer. I feel like the space has gotten a little stagnant in recent years, right? Not a lot of innovation at that point. The ones that are, well, it's typical, right? You get the big players in a space, they get bought up by the big companies, and then they stop innovating and they stop driving that, and it just kind of becomes a slap your brand on everything and keep upselling. So it's the smaller companies that are the ones that are trying to keep it alive and keep it moving. So, but yeah, SOAR was definitely another multiplier because that was a force multiplier across the board, right? You can now start to automate your workflows in a unified platform in a unified fashion across the board and get that same, like, let's be honest, right? SOC is a service, right? You have deliverables. You need to show value to your customers. So the more platforms that are out there that help you enable a same look and consistent feel over and over again, despite what region, what analysts, all that stuff, those are game changers. Because at the end of the day, you have to sell the SOC operation to a leadership team that doesn't speak security, they speak business. And you need to show them the value that this platform brings, right? And not just platform as a tool, but platform as why don't we outsource the SOC? Why don't we outsource, incident response? You need to show that value, and platforms like SOAR, case management, all those kind of things are what you need to use to, I call it like, that's the paint you need to paint the picture, right? If you don't have green and you're in the middle of painting a forest, you're SOL, right? But if you figure it out, you are intentful from the very beginning with the exact picture you want to paint and make sure you get all your supplies in order with the right tools, that can be a game changer. So SOAR is definitely a big one. And I think that helped too, because it started to turn us into a more automated fashion, right? Like you can get dashboards from Splunk, but I would argue that 9 times out of 10, most people miss telling the why behind their Splunk dashboard. or they try and solve for 20 different things at once, right?
Mm.
This isn't just a dashboard to give you an analyst overview. We also want to show you uptime, downtime. We want to show you SLA responsive, and they cram everything into one dashboard, and it just becomes useless, right? And we've all seen it. You've gone through operations where you get the tour and you got the data wall with all the pretty maps and colors and everything. But you talk to the analyst team, you're like, so which one of these do you guys look at? And they're like, none. You're like,
But,
okay.
pew, 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 pew.
Yep.
Yeah, view maps. Yeah, exactly. I forget which one of the used to like do the Star Wars kind of going through the tunnel threat maps.
Was it
There was
Threat
one where
Bud?
literally like we'll choose a random one and it would like almost like bring you down like you were flying through the Death Star and then it'd pop out the other end. It was real gimmicky.
That's cool.
I'm sure someone will call it out here, but I'm drawing a blank on it. But yeah, that changed it because that started to put the power back in the analyst's hands, right? When you had a SOAR platform, because now you can kind of curate the right stories, but you need the right people behind it driving. So SOAR is a big differentiator. And today's day and age, obviously AI is the namespace, but I would argue we're starting to see trends that are finding gaps in a lot of security tools that we think are bulletproof in a sense from a big, platform perspective. You're starting to see a lot of stories come out there where they're evading and bypassing certain functionalities and stuff like that. So I think we're on the verge of seeing kind of a shift to where there must going to be new solutions coming out that try and plug the holes of these larger solutions, right?
Could you give some specifics of types, maybe not name
Yeah,
specifically, but types of gaps you're saying?
like anti-ransomware, stuff like that,
Mm.
right? You're seeing a lot of ransomware stuff come out these days where they had their full security stack on the platform, still got popped, and it's because, let's be honest, the same reason we talked about a little before, right? Administrative tools being utilized by malicious actors is what was the MO back in the day. Now it's security tools being utilized by malicious actors, right? Think about some of these platforms that you have, they give you real-time access to endpoints remotely. Dude, like that's money. And if they can utilize and exploit these things to get that kind of access, like imagine falling victim to malware because it was delivered via your own security stack or your own security tools, right? Like that's a slap in the face. So if you can find ways to plug these holes to do these things at scale, I think that's a big game changer. So I think malware, anti-ransomware, you're seeing a lot of that coming out right now, a lot of claims for that. So I think that one's pretty interesting, right? And like deception tech is getting pretty cool too.
Mm.
Putting some of these things out there and starting to give, instead of giving denials, right? Start to feed threat actors misinformation, false information, give them false flags, false keys, false passwords, stuff like that. And to be able to kind of use those almost in a canary sense, right? So if you see them being released on the dark web and you can find that hit, hey, you now have a little bit of attribution or a little bit more understanding. Technologies like that, I think, are going to be that one of the upcoming disruptors a little bit, because that's the $1 million question, right? Anytime you deal with a breach, the customer immediately wants to, well, who did it?
Yep.
Who did it? Why'd they do it? What was the reason? And you're like, dude, attribution is so freaking hard these days. Things like that, where you can kind of feed false information. Maybe that's the canary in the coal mine kind of approach, right?
It's like the adding the plus sign and then the website that you're using your email on when you sign up to something to see if they sell your data.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading something, I think it was yesterday or this morning, where someone got popped because the threat actor was able to deploy another RMM or remote monitoring tool and then disabled the already existing RMM platform and then use their new RMM to set registry keys to like disable like shadows or whatever it might be, right? And then proceeded with their attack. So make sure you have anti-tampering on your current solutions so it's not possible, because that should definitely be detected, right? If you have software and you have an idea of your standard image, anything outside of that, such as especially RMM or additional EDR solutions, you should be very cautious of and investigate.
Yeah, that stuff's wild. I used to know a guy when I did a lot of pen testing at at another company, he used to love going after security tools like SIMs. He would always, he had so many, he had not so many, he had quite a few exploits in his back pocket, and he would target that as soon as he got in the environment, and then use that to like recon and propagate. Like ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean it's like a badge of honor, right? If you can turn their own tools against them, Trojan horse that thing, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, I think things are going to change up here shortly. I think we're kind of in a little bit of a stagnant period. I would say I haven't seen a lot of innovation, but I was just at Black Hat a little earlier this year, saw some pretty cool stuff that's coming through the pipeline. So
Yeah, you always see cool stuff at Black Hat, and then it never comes to fruition, and it's very sad.
disappointing, right? It
Yeah.
falls flat somewhere along the line, but as long as somebody out there is trying to innovate and push a thing, hopefully it'll make its way around.
Yeah. I'm actually sad. You're talking about a SOAR and how it's been around for a while. I have yet to use a SOAR.
Really?
Yeah.
Same.
I have never worked, even when I've worked in a SOC, we've never had a SOAR. It's been
Okay.
very sad and
My first
disappointing.
case was with Demisto,
hmm
back in the day, and then they got bought out by Palo.
I didn't realize that.
Funny, yeah.
And then you
So
have
they're Palo now, Palo XOR.
what
So
is
I
it?
don't know, you might have to edit this out here, but dropping names left and right. But yeah, it's funny because even when you go and get the demo, you'll see the Demisto nameplate still on the tool. You'll see like Dbot, their automation tool, and all that stuff. So you can still see that it's got the branding and logo there. But that was the first one I learned with. Funny enough, those guys, the one that I sold, guys that I'm friends with from this company, went and started another company called Rebel Soak and took a swing at SOAR. Did great work there. It actually got acquired by Arctic Wolf, and now they're on to the armed cyber side of things, and they're doing some anti-ransomware and some cool stuff on their end. But it's small world, right? So I was design partner when I was at my previous company working with Demisto, and then got tied into the Rebel Stokes guys. Next thing I know, I'm with the armed cyber side of things. And small world, it's kind of that same team and group that came from that. So it's cool to see that people are still innovating and not afraid to step out of certain spaces and into others. But SOAR is fun. It's a lot of challenge. It's difficult in certain ways, especially in the beginning. It was a lot of lift, a lot of run and maintain, and high cost and investment to kind of keep everything running. Now I think they've gotten pretty good with it being relatively light lift and off on cloud infrastructure and easy to kind of point, click, update and stuff. So it's changed a lot over the last couple of years, but it's definitely a game changer from a SOC standpoint, right? Because from an analyst perspective, it frees up a ton of time and lets you do other things that are more exciting. From a management perspective, it gives you keys to the kingdom, right? Because if you set that thing up right and you get the right fields, the right data, the right tags, you start orchestrating all of your backend data, your reporting, your templates, all of your quarterly business reports and all that stuff start to be auto-fed by the platform itself that you've curated, right? So from a leadership perspective, it helps you because it helps you tell that story. So that's the main reason why I drive now is I think it's a good platform. The more people you get in, right, the bigger the story you can tell. If you have your vulnerability management team, your cyber fraud, your insider threat, your digital forensics, your SOC team, all operating in one space, the more that you can correlate that data together to tell a bigger picture, that's a huge win from a business perspective, right? Especially if there's handoff and integration between those teams.
Yeah. And I
Whereas
think,
historically, case managements are segmented. Well, a lot of times the different digital forensics guys don't want to be in with the incident response, don't want to be in it's hard to kind of silo those things together.
yeah, everyone wants management or authority over their kind of own kingdom. And so you see all these separating, little minor kingdoms and like, oh, don't touch my toy, hands off.
You said one of my trigger words here, kingdom building drives me batty,
Yeah.
right? It's the wrong way to look at things, but it's how a lot of people do, right? Because you get tunnel vision. Hey, you're in charge of this program, go make this program great. And people are just down and in looking at everything they do, but a lot of times too hands-on from a management when you own the program. Whereas I joke around, there's Jocko Willing says it best, but he talks about, sometimes you got to look up and out instead of down and in. You got to kind of quarter your gun and kind of, quarter your weapon, look around and kind of see what's going on. I feel like too many leaders forget that, right? They're so focused on their internal program. They're not thinking about, hey, I get a quick win if I partner with you and we both have alignment here. And think about how many times you see in corporate environments where like, hey, we're concerned about lost and stolen devices, right? That's our big concern. It's the holiday season. People, they go away, smash and grab when they travel, all this stuff. If you actually break it down, depending on the company, right? You're talking about some physical security aspects. You're talking about some cybersecurity aspects. You're talking about device management aspects. You're talking about all these things. Yeah, thumbs up. You're talking about all these things plugged in together. I can do if I do this, we get,
Hey.
but like all this stuff tied together. But they make the mistake of saying, hey, you own lost and stolen stuff. I want the report from you. And a lot of times that leader will forget that there's other players in that space that can help make that program more successful, right? You got to get rid of that kingdom building mentality, right? It's delivering a product and keeping your eye on that mission. So that stuff drives me batty. I tell people all the time, I will hand over the reins to a program. I will hand over if it makes sense because I want what's best for the thing, not what's best for me and my team and my kingdom, right?
Yeah, a lot of that can just be solved by just people talking and sharing. And so many people just get siloed. And I think the governments especially very much
We got
does
egos and
that.
stuff too, right?
Yeah.
You've got a lot of people who they want this. I mean, we had it in the military, right? I used to joke around that you would have people that are there for 15, 20 years and they wouldn't share any information with anyone, right? It was job security.
Mm-hmm.
I can do it, no one else can. It's job security. But in reality, you don't realize that you're pigeonholing yourself a little bit, right? You're not teaching other people to up and come. You're not you're supposed to put yourself out of a job, let's be honest. It's the whole point of this thing, right? We don't want to be here forever. We want to be able to teach these skills to someone else. This way we can go off and do something different, and grow to that next role or that next opportunity. But when you hold all that stuff together, you don't realize that you're actually capping yourself out. It's short-sightedness, right? You're playing the short game instead of the long game.
Yeah, I don't know how people do that. Like it would drive me nuts to solve the same problem over and over, which is what they're doing when they kind of, only I know this thing. Like, here, someone else do it. I want to move on to a new
Please
problem.
take this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go do something different. Yeah.
Forgot what I was gonna say.
You look like
You're
you
welcome.
wanted to say something. I was like, here it comes. Where's it at?
What okay, so you mentioned Arms Cyber. How did you get into advising? Like, I know you mentioned that you were a product designer and then you just kind of know the people, but I guess
That was inadvertent, right? That wasn't how I fell into this, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So, again, networking is a huge part, and I will continue to advocate. Get out there, meet people. Funny enough, and I'm sure he'll see this and laugh. I'll send it to him. But one of my my annoying sales vendory guys was the one who actually kind of built a lot of these connections at Bridge. I got you there, Steve. But like he was a vendor for us and the sales guy for one of the teams that we worked with, that product that we had. Hit it off with him, became good friends and kind of chatted. And then there was an opportunity I was looking at a certain platform. He just moved into the company for SOAR and we started having that conversation. And funny enough, I had a little stint where I jumped away from my current role and came back 10 months later. But we were talking with them about buying a SOAR at my current company that I left. And then I bought it at the other company. And then I came back to this company and yeah, but we lost it at that point, right? But anyway, so that's how I met him. I got pulled in once we bought it at that little stint where I was away. I got brought into the customer advisory board, right? So that was my first taste test of kind of being involved in these things from a customer perspective. And there's different types of boards and all that kind of stuff, go to market type stuff. There's customer advisory events. Then there's like CISO level boards, all that kind of stuff. So that was my first taste with doing the customer advisory stuff, which was cool, and every company does it different, right? There's no textbook of it's exactly this is what you're going to expect every time. But it was cool because you got to sit around with other customers. You got to talk about the problems, the solutions. What are they doing? How are they innovating? What are they using the platform? You kind of get to share and copy off each other's homework a little bit. So it was just a cool experience. And again, networking is a huge, huge plus, right? You start to meet people from various organizations and parts of the globe, the country, the industry that you normally wouldn't brush into. So I was fortunate enough to be brought on as a customer advisor, and really enjoyed my time there. When they got acquired, congratulations again to that team. That was awesome. Fell off for a bit, right? Didn't really do much. And I was like, all right, cool. It was a fun ride while it lasted. I'll kind of continue doing what I'm doing and keep picking up on SOC work and growing my team out, which was good timing anyway. But lo and behold, probably about 9-10 months after that, I had another company reach out and they were like, hey, we're looking for, someone to come in and be an advisor. Obviously they want a customer advisor, right? Hey, can we sell you so you can come do the thing, right? But they came back a little bit later and they were like, hey, would you help us? Would you consider being an advisor? How that normally works. You get some type of stake, shares, something along the lines there, restricted SOC units, something. And it's an exchange for your time, right? Sometimes it's join a hour call once a month. Sometimes it's meet with the CEO or the COO or something like that on random off meetings, just to kind of get your insight as a practitioner in the industry, right? So I'm currently doing that for Radiant Security, which is a cool SOAR innovation where they're trying to use AI and all that stuff in their day-to-day operations with the intent of simplifying a lot of it, right? Help enlighten things, illuminate the way, I think is their latest phrase. But how do you enable the people who are the practitioners and hands-on to not have to go to the engineering team to make all these changes when AI can help you and augment that team and kind of lower that bar to entry, right? So I came in with them. I've been with them for a little over a year now. Great group of people. So definitely awesome product to go take a look at and kind of see when you're talking about innovation in the source space, right? That's one of those smaller companies that, no offense, but they're doing it right, right? They're trying to find a problem, found a problem and they're trying to solve it this way. It can help. Let's be honest, a lot of companies nowadays are going third party because it's hard to run and maintain security operations, especially for small and medium business. So if this can be a force multiplier for larger vendors, great, which is what SOAR is by design. But if there's smaller, medium business that can take this leap and do this thing, this helps you not have to bring in a team of, 5, 10, 15 engineers on top of your analyst team to make this thing run. So, but yeah, so I got plugged in with them and been involved with them for a little over a year now. They've been great. And then Armed Cyber, like I said, same crew that I've dealt with before. Showed me the new platform, the new technology, and I was very impressed with what they were doing so far. So they're in the anti-ransomware space, that deception tech and stuff I was talking about a little earlier. So really impressed, right? Because Armed Cyber there, they reached out to me, and initially it was, from a customer perspective, and that's what I was, made sense. I love the platform. They do a lot of, because think about it, when you're rolling out security stack, you guys know this because you see it all the time, but there's a lot of devices and stuff that you can't cover, right? They don't run the certain agent, OS, whatever you need. There's conflicts, right? This is something that's a lighter, kind of lift agent to deploy. And, their kind of thing is, what does it say? When you're worried about ransomware, like this is almost like you're giving yourself a root kit, right? So the individual who wrote this, very, very brilliant person, who worked for a certain 3-letter agency, and was like, hey, I help with this kind of stuff all the time. Why don't I write an ransomware? And that's kind of how the idea came to be. And the intent is, it started off with like just the anti-ransomware piece, and now they're kind of going into deception tech and all those other great things. But looked into it from a customer standpoint, and then lo and behold, I got the conversation where they have a bunch of folks who were, that C-suite folk who are all, CISOs and other parts of other companies and all this stuff that are on their board. And they were like, hey, we're looking for somebody who's kind of like a hands-on technical driver here to help add to that conversation. So that's how I was approached and brought into the door and into the fold with that team. And it was great. Like we went out to Black Hat, we sat down in a room, we talked about the future, the roadmap, the things that are going on. And I love what those guys are doing too. So it's, again, networking's a huge part, right? But it opens up doors. Again, engineered luck, like we're talking about, right? I happen to become close enough with one of these sales guys, who Steve opened the door for me and advocates for me a lot. And I really appreciate that friendship. But I knew it was different from day one, right? You meet some people, and I'm sure you guys know it, but like you meet some people that you just click with, right? You get each other, you want to see each other succeed. You're happy when little small wins that they share out with the team and stuff. So that kind of made the differentiator there. But yeah, it opened up doors, and I plan on keep answering those doors every time I get the opportunity, because for me, why I like the advisory side of things is it gets you networking, right? You get to meet new people. I got to meet some great CISOs from all different types of impressive backgrounds that are great names to add to my Rolodex. But B, you get to be the driving factor in the new platform, right? You get to see some new exciting technology, and then your voice is actually what helps shape that direction that it goes on, right? We're talking about like, hey, what makes the most sense? What logo stands out? What motto? What do you think we should be targeting as our next to be able to be a part of those conversations behind closed doors is an awesome feeling. So, and especially when you understand the technology, right? And you understand the value that it could bring. So, I'm always looking at this thing from a perspective of like, dude, if I can get this into a SOC, right? How can I operationalize this thing and really showcase some value here? And then to the bigger picture, right? How do I turn that around to show return on investment to the leadership board that doesn't talk security, but talks dollars?
Yeah, that's always
Nice.
the key is ROI for any executive. How's this saving me money in the long run? What am I getting out of it?
Mhm. Or how's it mitigating risk or checking whatever box that we're worried about from a compliance standpoint or whatever the goal is, right? You need to make sure you check it and you check it well and you show them how you check it. So
Yeah. Thank you. That was very in depth, and I appreciate it because I haven't had the ability, even though I test a lot of products, I haven't had the ability to be on any like customer boards, and I've even requested one be made at one vendor, and that was something that wasn't able to be done. So that's really interesting to learn about. And personally, I think Mike and I would be good at that type of work just because we approach like problems differently.
and they have tabs too, right? Technical advisory boards where they're looking for subject matter experts to help with the technical driving and innovation of a company, and I've sat in on those type of boards as well with other companies. That's been really interesting when they bring engineers and folks who can actively exploit or do the thing or break the thing or build the thing and kind of help us do code review or whatever else from a technical standpoint.
Do you find when you're on these boards that they're pretty receptive to the feedback?
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point of it, right? Let's be honest. If you got a new product, right, and you're putting it out there, that's the number one thing is feedback, especially from people that you deem to be close enough to your target audience and demographic to give you that feedback candidly. So I would argue that I think that's the main factor there. And if you're doing it any other way, maybe you're missing the point, right? Like if I were building a product, I would want, if I'm building a product around operational, items from a operation security standpoint, and I want to know how to break it, I'd come to folks like you and be like, hey, tell me honestly, what have you done? How can you do this? What would you look for? Help me understand it so I can make sure that I'm buttoning up and things on my end. You look for that real world expertise and advice, and that's really what brings that factor in. So
Yeah, I mean that's why I
middle
asked.
finger subject matter
It's
experts.
meant for that, but doesn't mean that they actually
Yeah,
utilize it
yeah,
for
and
that.
people use it incorrectly all the time. Let's be honest, right? You get somebody, sometimes you hand them a wrench and they use it as a hammer, but
Yeah, I mean
it
it's
is
like
what it
people
is. They want
paying
to be
a
honest.
pen tester. Here's whatever for this thing. Okay, you paid me to consult you, but this stuff is still here. These critical flaws for 3, 4 years
Yeah,
in a row. So I
well,
mean,
that's just it too. Like you pay for a pen test and you do the thing, but are you actually actioning things afterwards, right?
yeah,
Are you going to want to waste your time doing the same pen test for the same customer 3 years in a row and it's the same results every single time? Eventually, you're going to be like, well, you're clearly not utilizing this correctly. You're not utilizing the services. This is almost a waste of my time. But
yeah,
some people paycheck and walk away and be happy, right? Other people, it all depends what your motivators are, what your mission is, right? If you're just there to
yeah.
collect the check, hey, I'll collect the check. But if you're there to actually try and fix things and change things, stuff like that's going to bother you.
Oh yeah, yeah. That stuff definitely bothers me. But sometimes it's like you're winning a game of inches, and some like I've had customers. It's like 3 years. Okay, finally, now they're investing heavily and making a ton of progress in a short time. Like, okay, it was worth waiting and being patient. I was here to facilitate
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. But it's again, to understand what the end goal is, right? Some people are just doing it to check a box. Other people are doing it because they really want to change. They really want to bring innovation. So
yeah. You can in the offensive world, you can pretty much tell who it is for the most part, who's just checking a box like, oh, that's too expensive, and they're like trying to talk you down to like $1,000 for a pen test, but no, not my type of pen test.
you get what you
Sorry.
pay for. I
Yeah,
say that all the time, man. You get what you pay for.
yeah. Go to
Do
China.
you really want to deal with somebody who's willing to drop their price all the way to that point? Because then are you really getting value? Because at that point, I would question, do they see value in what they're providing?
Yep. Yeah. People are
They're willing to
wild.
go that low. Odds are they're probably sitting there going, yeah, whatever. I don't care either. But it's probably not who you want to engage and help you steer your entire program based off of.
Yep, pretty much. What else you got, AJ? You got any more questions?
Not a question, just a feedback. I mean, I think it's really cool that your employer allows you to be on these boards and to come on podcasts like this. Like that's not something that exists everywhere. And so I appreciate it, and kudos to them, because ultimately it reflects back on the organization, right? One, they were good enough to hire you. Two, other companies see the value that you bring. So it really just highlights you and your organization. And I wanted to address that.
Yeah.
Appreciate
it shows
appreciate
trust too on your part. Like, all right,
Yeah.
I trust you to go out here, not necessarily
I
make
will
us
say,
look
like,
good, but not destroy us publicly. How about that?
Yeah, I left and came back, right? And I appreciate the fact that they were willing to do that, right? But this is also, I would say, the first company that I made it a point where I was like, I actually enjoy the mission. I enjoy what we do. I would love the opportunity to come back. There were other companies in the past where I'd be like, nope, I'm out. Deuces,
Yeah.
see you later. But yeah, this good leadership team overall. We're trying to do the right thing. We've got, I joke around. I've worked in environments where we've had the most amazing technology in the world, and we've had people that didn't use it to the full capability, and it was kind of a waste. I've worked in environments where we didn't have the technology stacks we needed, but I had some of the smartest people I've ever worked with around me, and the way they innovate and drive change and solve for problems that were way outside of their scope, just to be able to make life a little easier, were great. So I would rather work with a good group of people and not have the right stacks that we need to do the thing than work with a group, all the money in the world, and not have the right people who are pushing, driving, and innovating change. So I felt like I found that here, right? And full transparency, right? The mission with being in that biomedical health space was the first one that hit home for me, right? There's what they do actually saves lives, right? Which I haven't had that in a long time since my military background. So to know that I'm doing things that help enable other people to do such magnificent work, and again, big mission, big picture, right? I show up every day to make their environment safe so they can do all the life-saving stuff that they do to make other people's lives better. So that's my main driver there, is a little bit of solace and be able to put my head down on the pillow at the end of the night, that I'm not just driving up, shareholders' profits, but we're actually making an impact on people. So
Whoa, buddy, don't target us, okay?
that's not a jab, I promise.
That's a good.
No, it's just in general, man. Like I've worked for all those, and I feel like the mission helps you in the end of everything, right? At the end of the day, put your head down on your pillow and be comfortable with what you did and what you're doing. Be in alignment with yourself. So
Like Simon Sinek, I think he said,
Yeah.
What's your why?
exactly, dude. That's my dude. I read I've got all of his books, read them all multiple times over. Him, Jocko Willink, Gary V, Grant Cardone.
Is that Jobs
There's a lot of
behind
good
you?
leadership there. That's my jam. As much as I love cyber and I love what I do, the leadership aspect of things is really what drives me, and it goes all the way back to my time back here with AJ in the military, right? I had a lot of great leaders, had a lot of not so great leaders, and if you're smart, you learn from both. Sometimes you learn from the not so great ones more than you learn from the great ones. But my calling was, as an analyst, I used to watch people who were single, airmen, stuff like that, get used and abused for holiday duties, night duties, overnights, weekends, all that kind of stuff. And you just saw them kind of get steamrolled. And in this industry, it's no surprise, there's a lot of people who are rather quiet and inward, who won't vocally speak up or call out that thing. So that's where I felt my calling came into place, right? I came from a large sales background, being out there, extroverted as opposed to introverted. So I was the guy that used to raise my hand and be like, is there a better way to do this? Can we find better solutions here? So I did not fit in well in the military, to tell you that.
That's where AJ got that
but-
from. Then okay, I
Yeah,
can see
well,
it.
Yeah, we questioned everything, right? But they joke around, right? They also taught us that, like, legitimately, when we were going through the schoolhouse. AJ, you wouldn't know this. Sorry, just joking. But like, they taught you to walk the line. You find a line, and then you tend to walk like 3 or 4 feet to the side of the line and try and push those limitations, right? That's what makes a good cyber operator, is you find your boundary and then you try and walk it a little bit further. But Yeah, that's the stuff that made me realize that I think leadership was my calling over being technical, right? I enjoyed being hands-on analyst. I enjoyed doing the work. I was good at it, but there were people who were great at it, right? But then at the same hand, I was like, what can I do to make my impact on this? Like, I can ride this out and I won't say mediocre, but I'll be an all right analyst and an all right wherever else I went. I was like, but I enjoy the people aspect. I enjoy growing people. I enjoy advocating, trying to do the right thing, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, maybe leadership is my jam. So I tried it out with team lead, fell in love with it. SOC manager, now global manager, been a director before as well. So definitely what I enjoy doing at this point. So as much as I enjoy being hands-on and doing that stuff, now more so I enjoy the strategy, the tactics, the improving of programs in people's lives, right? I very humbled, had an intern that just left over the summer, heading back home to California. But, at the end of this, he was like, I couldn't have asked for a better internship, right? I love the team. I love the group. I learned so much being hands-on. Like, I appreciate the opportunity. Like, he came up with an idea for a change in our platform. And I was like, hey, let's do it. Let's push it through. Let's see what happens, right? And he's like, the fact that you were willing to back that kind of thing, I'm like, dude, that's what we're here for, but that's an experience now that is going to help shape another person's life and their journey moving forward in security. And, hopefully I didn't do him dirty, right? He's not looking for this thing for the rest of his life and never going to find it. But you get a taste of what good looks like, right? And I joke around with my team all the time. I've got a lot of people who came fresh from college. We've hired the last 4 interns. And it's great, but you also don't realize you don't know what you don't know, right? So you might be in a great environment, but you're going to make that leap and then find, we all have different motivators, money, training, experience, whatever. But as you get later on in life, you start to realize what matters and what doesn't, depending on where you are. And that's where I joke around, like they don't realize how good you have it until you leave sometimes, right? So, but that was my why and my motivator, right? Is I wanted to make an environment where folks like AJ didn't get tagged for overnight holiday duty every single time we had to man the desk, right, for 24/7 ops. Make sure we do it right, we do it fair, we take care of our people, and your people take care of you, right? Ultimately, we're all in the customer service business. We're in the people business. You take care of your people will take care of your customer, and everyone's happy. If your people are miserable, it's going to reflect back to the customer experience, and everything's going to be crap. So if you like where you work every day, it makes life a lot easier. So work hard, play hard. I'll admit I'm the guy who brings Nerf guns into the office, and I quit my team, and we have all out Nerf wars sometimes because ops are stressful, right? Sometimes you're in the shit and it's miserable and you're at it for months at a time sometimes. But if you can hang out, order pizzas, watch a movie, and shoot each other with Nerf guns, it kind of helps balance it out a little bit. So create that environment that you wanted to come up in, right? That you wish you could be a part of. Keep that lens. That's the lens I always use, right? If I was an analyst in my op right now, would I be happy?
Wise words. So here's my final question. So for a new leader, operations leader, so SOC and Tangential Services, what is one thing that you would advise them to do as a new leader? AJ's laughing. This is me. I'm asking for myself.
Yeah, no. I think coming into, and let's say coming in that new, right? You don't know the people, you don't know the team, you're kind of getting established. My recommendation is take your time and get to know everything. You're not going to be the master of everything. You're never going to be, right? I joke around, but I tell my team all the time, like, no matter where I go into a new role, it's only 6 to 9 months where I'm just in learning mode, right? I'm going to set up an hour-long session with every single person on that team, and I'm going to ask them what's going on, what's good, what's bad, what's indifferent, what do you like, what do you not like, and take notes, and then after, maybe that takes you 3 months, right, to meet with everyone in between getting all your onboarding and stuff, and learning what leadership wants of you as well. But then after that, sit down and take a month and try and come up with a rough vision. What's your plan? Where do you want to drive this thing? Where do you want to impact? Like, what's your 3-year target, your 5-year target, right? Hey, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy, right? It can be, hey, I want to get to a point where, I work with these 3 teams and we have a collective vision to hit whatever company goal is, or, my company has like a 2030 vision. So I was like, all right, cool. Let's align with our 2030. Where do I want to be? I want to be in an operational space where collaboration is key. we're working closer as a team to unified platform. Like you start to identify those gaps and start to call them out there, right? And then your next couple of months is getting feedback from the teams, right? You put that together and you present something and you say, hey, here's where I think we can go based on all of the feedback that you provided me, right? You told me what was good, what was bad, what was indifferent, what you loved, what you hated. Here's my rough roadmap on how we're going to address all of those things. Keep what we loved, change what we hated, identify where there were problems that we can help. And here's where I think, good looks like for this organization. And it's going to change for every org, right? You're going to have to do that no matter what job, how many times you flip. But don't rush into it, right? Take your time, do that, because what you don't realize is spending those one-on-ones, spending that time, getting to know people. Don't just make it business, too. Get to know the people, right? What are they doing? How are they doing it? What does their life look like? Are they married, single, kids, all that stuff? Like, and you don't have to go super personal. People don't want it, but the more you get to know, the better, because that helps you understand your team, you understand the mission, the program. And then at the end of that 6 to 9 month window, you have a vision where people are buying into, right? And the number one thing that is a game changer from a leadership perspective is when you show them that, if they can start to take ownership in it, they're going to take it and drive in that direction. And it's no longer all on you, right? And it might take a year, it might take 2 years to really see some returns on that, but take your time, ask questions, don't be afraid to be the dummy in the room. Play dumb sometimes. Even if you think you know the answer, hear it from them first. Let them give you what they perceive it to be, because that's your ultimate thing, right? You're not there to do what you think is best. You want to show them what good is and let them drive to it. This way they can continue that sustained vision throughout, right? I give the metaphor of like, you've got 8 horses tied to a cart. If they're all pulling in different directions, you're pulling the cart apart. But as soon as you come up with a vision and a direction, a vision statement, mission statement kind of thing, and you give people a little bit of direction, even if they're not directly on target, if they're pulling in the right direction, you're at least going to get a lot further.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, man, it's a journey, right? Nobody does it right. We all make mistakes, but be human about it. That's the big thing.
Be a human. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks. Lots of really good information. I think people are going to get a
Yes.
ton out of this episode, like a lot. Definitely going to have you on some other time and dive into more some more SOC stuff. I love learning and just exchanging information more than anything, right? It's just us learning from each other and this worked, this didn't work, and growing faster, almost masterminding. I'm a big fan. I like mastermind groups and stuff. So yeah, thanks. Nice meeting you too.
Yeah, great meeting you too, Mike.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I did good.
Oh, shucks. No, I appreciate everything, man. And again, AJ, I give you kudos. Thanks. You're also one of those marks for me, right? No, I wasn't too bad way back in the beginning when I was first cutting my teeth at this leadership thing. So
Yeah, and I appreciated you as a leader then. I appreciate you as a leader now. That was a big blemish in my military journey where I was like, yeah, nah, I'm done.
But again, how much of a difference would it have made if you had a supervisor who didn't try and have your back, right? And just let you get steamrolled?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's again, doing the right thing is my big motivator. I will do it every single time. Like I joke around with my old director, he retired, but I was like, dude, I want you to know, but through my actions, right? Because it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to constantly keep showing it through your actions, right? I tell people all the time, I want you to know exactly what I'm going to do every single time. And I was like, and that hopefully is the right thing. So every time I'm in a situation where you see something coming up and I'm involved, if it's the right thing, I'm going to do it. I don't care how long it is. I don't care how much it's going to take. I don't care what hell it puts me through. Do the right thing. Yeah, appreciate it. Like I said, I'm glad I wasn't too far off the mark back then and made an impact. So hopefully I continue to keep doing that, because I think that's where my calling is. So
yeah, for sure. Especially since you not doing the initial thing that leadership wanted put you in the scope, and you still chose that choice. I think that speaks volumes to who you are as a person. So I definitely appreciate that. And I think
put myself in your shoes, man. What would I want? Right.
Yeah.
Bottom line. And that's what we need to do. And again, I think it goes back to what I said earlier, right? I'd rather have the trust of my people beneath me than the trust of those above me, because push comes to shove, the right thing to do is to have your people's back, because they're going to ultimately make the program successful. You have one leader above you who's upset, or politics or whatever, you can survive that. You have an entire team underneath you that no longer trusts or believes in you, or takes any account of what you're doing. You're never coming back from that. You might as well go find another role and hope that that stink doesn't stay on you, right? Yeah, it's the truth, man. And I truly believe, like, I've heard a lot, like, lead from the front and all that, lead from behind. Like, I think you have to be audible at all times, right? You got to know when to lead from within, lead from in front, lead from behind, depending on the scenario at hand. But that was a big lesson I've always learned. And honestly, it didn't even come from the military. I worked at a lumberyard back in the day, and I had a manager who, we were a top performing store. I was the manager in training. I was the youngest at this company at that point in time, 19 years old, and I was assistant manager. But he was the type of person who, if we had to go clean the bathrooms, he would grab a bucket with you and be like, hey, you go take care of the women's room. I'll go take care of the men's room real quick, right? Hey, we just got a huge delivery. I'm going to go hop on this forklift and take care of that one. Can you go hop on the forklift and take care of that one? Like, he always would never ask you to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. And then in a situation where he couldn't help you, you didn't think twice. You just went and did the thing because you knew if he had the time, he would do it. So that type of leader really stood out to me, and that's what I've always tried to emulate since then. So be somebody who's true to their word and actually doesn't think that any of the things they do are beneath them. You know, I've had the same experience, but I had an assistant manager at that store who would walk past 3 ringing phones and sit on his phone, you know, pull out a cell phone and start playing a game, and look at you guys like, dude, you answer the phones. What are you doing? You know? And I remember how that made me feel, and be like, this son of a bitch, you know, but then the other manager, like, he asked us to stay late. Dude, yeah, what do you need? I'm here. You wouldn't even think twice, right? And that made a lot of sense to me, and that's always something to emulate there. So, and it's silly, but that, literally working at a lumberyard back in the day as a teenager. But that dude set a right example for me, and I've emulated ever since.
Great stuff. AJ, you want to wrap us up? Well, is there anything else you want to add before the end? We definitely want to give you time if you want to talk about anything, if you have social media, whatever. We don't care.
Yeah, where
Yeah,
can people
no,
find you?
anyone has any questions, things they want to reach out to, more than happy to engage. You'll find me on LinkedIn and stuff like that. You'll see the big bearded guy, so I'm sure you won't be able to miss me. I stand out in the crowd. I found that out during a Black Hat, right? I was standing in the line getting to get on an airplane, and all of a sudden, coworker that worked at a place that I had left before they joined was just like, John Sharpe? I'm like, who the hell? So apparently I stand out like a sore thumb. I get it. But yeah, LinkedIn, happy to chat with anyone, happy to have conversations around career benefits, coaching, any of that stuff. Love that kind of stuff. And always looking to give back. I still help with veterans who are transitioning out. Currently getting plugged into my local community with, you know, veteran advisory councils and the local fort alliances and all that stuff, trying to help folks who are transitioning and pay it forward, right? As much as the military helped me in my career, I want to give back to those same people who are looking to transition and hopefully find the same level of success. So reach out for anything. I appreciate the time as always. I'd love to be back on. I appreciate what you guys are doing here and trying to share the word and get more people aware of all different types of things in the cyberspace. It's a small world and a small community. So I'm sure we'll cross paths again.
I'm sure. All right, take
Cool,
us home,
thanks.
AJ.
Thanks for your time, John. So to recap, we discussed a lot of things. I'm sure we're gonna have a ton of shorts out of this one. Some bangers.
Sorry, I'm all over the place.
No, you're good. It's gonna be great for us. So
And you.
we
That's what I'm here for.
yeah, we've discussed kind of some operations leadership, managing other managers, going through different technologies and the growth and changes within the security landscape, SOARs, artificial intelligence embedded into investigations, talking about how to get on an advisory board, what that actually entails, and how that compensation comes back to you for your time, which I found really interesting. And I did make note of a book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So I'm going to check that out for sure. But thank you so much again for your time, John.
I got
Appreciate
an
it.
army of books if you ever want to talk. This is my jam. So
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be sure to stay in touch, man. But yeah, it's great to have you, and we'll see you next time.
yeah, thanks everyone.
All right, see ya.